Hey, David Brewster here with a new episode of 3 for All. This is 3 Gary Moore licks from 1978, and I've had a lot of requests to feature more from this late, great, absolute guitar legend, Mr. Gary Moore. And I've featured him in Soloing Secrets episodes, there's Chordplay lessons, 3 for All lessons, but this lesson's going to focus on a different part of his life and career, and that's the mid to late 70s when he was working with Colosseum II, and this was definitely Gary's foray into 70s fusion, which is really interesting to notice Gary, going from blues rock to fusion, and then returning to rock, and then blues rock, and ending his career with blues. So it's really interesting to notice Gary, in his life, shifting musical gears and pushing himself in different directions, which is really inspiring. So if this sounds cool, buckle up, because here we go. So Gary worked with Colosseum II from 1975 until around 1978, and it's noticeably a different side of Gary Moore's music and musical output, because he really noticeably was pushing himself in a different direction. You gotta think bands like Return to Forever and Mahavishnu Orchestra were very popular at this time, and I think that's why Colosseum II just erupted and kind of seemingly came out of nowhere. And very interesting band, some vocal songs, some instrumental music, but definitely very inspiring and very different from the norm. So back in the 70s, Colosseum II released 3 studio albums. That's Strange New Flesh in 1976, Electric Savage in 77, and War Dance also in 1977. Here's an image with the album cover so you can find those albums, and definitely check these out, because Gary's just ripping and tearing it up the whole time, right here. So the licks in this lesson came from a live concert with Colosseum II in 78, and I'd actually never seen this footage before. It was uploaded a couple years ago, and I was like, yeah, there's Gary playing with Colosseum II. So I don't really know the details as far as if this was televised or if it was just a bootleg or something. I'm not really sure. But it's really cool to see and hear Gary play like this. So buckle up. Here we go. All right, the first lick kind of reminds me of mid-70s Jeff Beck, that melodic kind of lyrical style, something like this. Time. So right there we're going to grab a fretted B twice, and then you're going to grab this A up on the high E string and bend that up to B. Then he starts playing on the high E string right here, that A, G sharp, A to that B, and then 2 A's, like that. And he's kind of coming down like a little part of a C sharp minor arpeggio right there, because he's doing... And he's grabbing that G sharp, that E, and then that C sharp right there. You hear him slide that off, then he grabs this D to C sharp, A to G right there. So 2 notes on the B string and then 2 notes on the G string right there. And then he does this kind of muted strum, or like a muted, pick note right there, percussive note. And then he's kind of smear bending that G right there. And he does that twice, like the scratch note, the kind of half bend on that G, the scratch note, the half bend on the G, and then end on that E. Like that. Like that. Time. The next idea revolves around diminished 7th arpeggios, and they're slightly sequenced in the beginning. This is really cool, like this. One more time. So Gary's doing some interesting things right here. So he's starting with this aggressive E note, and then you want to play that E again, and then you're doing G, E, G on the low E string right there at the start. And then right there, that's where you're going to climb up diminished 7th arpeggios on the A and the D string like this. When you get to that E and G on the D string, that's where you're going to grab this B flat and you want to do a position shift slide up to that D flat right there. When you you get up to that D flat, that's where you're going to grab this E and G, and then you're going to finish by bending that G up a step and a half. And that's also kind of outlining that diminished 7th arpeggio. Like that. And that's really cool. And typically when you hear guitarists use diminished 7th arpeggios like Randy Rhoads or players like that, either they're trilling them or maybe they're just climbing straight up or straight down. But that's cool to hear like a little turnaround kind of sequence at the beginning. It's also cool to hear that position shift slide and also that diminished 7th bend at the end. And I'm a sucker for any diminished, ideas. Diminished just sounds cool. And I really like the way Gary kind of arranged that on the fretboard. Climbing, sliding, bending. Cool lick. Okay, next up, this really interesting scale run. Something like this. One more time. So this is interesting, kind of like Aeolian based, and we're starting with this. So you're starting on that A note, you're going to start on that A on the D string, and then you're grabbing B, C, D, C, B on the G. And then you're going to do this A to G, and you're going to end on that G note with vibrato. So slowly you're doing... So you're starting on A, going up and down that scale, and then end on G. Right? And it's just crammed in there, too. It kind of reminds me of like some phrasing from classical and flamenco music, but it's, totally fusion right here. Like that. And then when you get to that G note, then you're going to do the similar thing, and you're going to do this G, A, and then B, C, B, A, G, and then you're going to end on that F sharp. Like that. So you're mimicking what you started with. You've got this, and then you've got, and he's doing, and then after you grab that F sharp, then he walks down. Like that. And it's just a really unusual, different phrase, but I like the speedy part of it, and then also that kind of sinister ending, too. One more time. And if you check out those Colosseum II albums, you're going to hear parts like that, real moody, music for sure, and these chances being taken by the whole band. They were like flying around all over the place. That's a cool idea. And I just like the idea of starting on one note and then you're kind of introducing and adding, more bits and parts of the scale. That's cool phrasing. Okay, here's a bonus lick from this footage, and it's this blurry legato finger roll move from Gary, like this. One more time. And this is awkward, it's kind of different, because like if I was going to play that, it's just 3 notes, that B, A to G, you could arrange that on a single string like that. That's not what Gary's doing. Gary's doing a finger roll. He's doing 3 notes on 2 strings, and he's also rolling, 1 finger for 2 of those notes, 2 notes on the same fret on 2 different strings. So that B, A, you want to roll over and grab that G. Like that. And then do the exact same thing up a whole step, that C sharp B, and now you're going to roll over to that A right there. So keep in mind, you could do the exact same thing on a single string like that. Hell, you could tap it. You could rearrange those notes a different way. You could do it like this. And like that. And And there I was doing a single note on the B and then 2 notes on the G. So it's kind of cool to like learn a motif or a lick or a phrase like that and then figure out different ways to play it on different strings, you know, incorporating different fingering options and stuff like that. So for Gary's way, it's interesting because you're rolling over there and you're picking that first note, pulling off to that A, and then you're going to use that same finger to kind of grab that G. And like I said, just move it up a whole step. Now that C sharp pulled off to B, and then roll over and grab that A note. And it's just an interesting blurry lick. Alright, that's going to wrap this look at 3 Gary Moore licks from 1978. Definitely a powerhouse, dynamic, sorely missed guitarist, for sure. Gary's a legend, absolutely. And I find it interesting because I've talked to tons of people about Gary Moore, friends and students and complete strangers, and it's interesting that certain people love certain eras of Gary's career. Some people like the gritty blues rock in the early years, some people like the 70s rock with Thin Lizzy, some people like the fusion from Colosseum II, some people like the hard rock, you know, solo albums from the 80s and stuff. And some people like the ultra blues that he was pushing out, you know, like later in his career, in his lifetime. So it's really interesting to notice one guy or one, you know, musician, guy or girl, but one player that just completely, you know, shakes things up, moves in a different direction, stylistically, you know, moves in a different, you know, style. Their tone changes, the playing changes, the music changes. That's really interesting, where it's not always the same thing for decades. You know, it's like it changes and mutates and morphs, which I feel like that's what an artist and musician should do. You should grow and push yourself, you know, instead of just getting relaxed and comfortable wherever you are, continually, you know, striving for greatness and, you know, breaking new ground and shaking things up. That's what every musician should do. But only certain players do that, and Gary definitely did. A total badass. So anyway, leave some feedback and comments. Please subscribe to my lessons, and I'll be back before you know with more content and material. Thank you.